Hey, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of Meta Perspective. And here on this podcast and YouTube channel, we're going to be discussing things like insight, awakening, the nature of reality, consciousness, phenomenology, and kind of everything that goes along with that, which is almost everything. It's pretty all encompassing, but we will get into other subjects as they come about. And you can follow us on Twitter. We're also on YouTube if you're listening to this on the podcast, and currently we're on Spotify. And today for our first guest, we have a really awesome guest, a great guy. His name is Sean McNamara, and he's the author of Renegade Mystic, Signal and Noise, the Telekinesis Training Method. And he has the website mindpossible.com, and he's done a ton of work in the field of, I guess we can call it psychic research or phenomenology. So welcome, Sean.
Thanks, James. It's great to be here. It's really an honor to be on the first episode of your show.
Yeah. You're the perfect guy for it because you have a background in all this stuff, really. So I just wanted to start off, with the basics. First of all, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Close enough. Yeah, it's not an easy name to pronounce. So yeah, McNamara.
How do you say it? Oh, okay.
McNamara.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sean McNamara. Oh,
yeah,
terrible.
I think you had it. Yeah. No, it's all right.
Close enough, right? So again, thank you so much for coming on. And you have written quite a number of books, and I'm impressed because I haven't written one book myself yet. And you have a new book coming out. Mindsight, is that the name of it?
Yeah, it's out. It's available.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's an audio book. Yeah, ebook, paperback.
Yeah, I'm going to be, for everybody listening, I'm going to be linking those books in the description. But we'll note as we go on through the podcast kind of what relates to what book. So relating to Renegade Mystic, and that's how I first became familiar with you. How did you get into all this stuff? We're talking about like meditation, psychic phenomenon, and kind of everything that you bring to the table nowadays. I mean, you have a pretty diverse background. So how did you get mixed up in this world?
The shortest answer is my fear of death. So when I was a kid, I had appendicitis, and I had a lot of pain for a few days and realized my mortality. And so growing up, I was haunted by that fear of death, and things happened. Like in 2 separate years, I had lumps removed from my chest. And when I was 25, I had heart surgery and other things where I really thought about my own death. And I was raised as a Catholic, but that's a faith-based system. And I'm kind of stubborn, and I like evidence, and I like getting my own answers. And I had always been looking for a way to find my own answers. And out of college, I started thinking about training in meditation. So I joined a local Buddhist community, thinking that maybe the Buddhist path or the path of meditation, and they're not necessarily the same thing, but one way or the other, they could offer me some answers to what happens when we die. Like if some part of me continues after my physical body is gone, if I could find that out for sure, that would relieve my fear of death. So that got me interested in becoming a spiritual person to find those answers. And after many years of training with a couple of different teachers and groups, I realized that I just learned how to be a really good Buddhist. Maybe not a good Buddhist, but I was really good at following that path. It's a very well-defined path. And the path that I follow is related to Vajrayana Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism. Under a couple different teachers.
Did you start off with that to begin with, or did you end up there for your main?
No, I started off with that. I mean, there's a set of training where you're not doing tantric meditations at the beginning, but you train and work your way up to that level. But after a few years and having some really bad experiences and realizing a lot of spirituality in the United States is just a business venture, it's just selling these secret meditation practices, I got turned off, and I got hurt by it, actually by a couple of teachers. And I was really frustrated. And I realized through my frustration that even though those paths I'm not going to equate the path with the teachers. They're just human beings doing what some humans do. But the paths were good, but they didn't answer my question. And I needed to find my own way. And I remembered learning about out-of-body experiences when I was a teenager, because I found Robert Monroe's book when I was like 16 or something. And I tried it when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, but I didn't get anywhere with it. But I thought, maybe I'll try it now. I've been meditating all these years. Maybe I can apply my meditative strength to some technique for having an out-of-body experience. And I found William Buhlman's books, which was great, because since Robert Monroe wrote his first book, Journeys Out of the Body, other books have been written which really explained the techniques much better, in my opinion, and gave a variety of techniques to try. So I trained myself for months to have an out-of-body experience. And then I had my first one and my second, but it was just the first one. And it was only a partial separation. When I returned to my body, I was free of my fear of death. And in this, I knew beyond the shadow of a doubt that some part of me is non-physical. And when my body is gone, that part of me will linger on in some way. And I know it's not all of me. We're composite beings. There's no single self. We're brain and consciousness. When the brain is gone, some part of me will be gone too, but some other part of me will linger. And of course, there's so much evidence now through mediumship that's been looked at scientifically, and ESP and all these other psychic abilities that show that there is something that occurs beyond the boundaries of the flesh. Something extends beyond, that has information and personality to it. So the out-of-body experience was my gateway in to all the other things that I've experienced. Because since then, finding my freedom from being tied to any religion, so I don't see myself as belonging to any religion now, but I see myself as a spiritual person. But I mostly feel myself free to experiment and to go looking in certain areas that other people don't want to look, and to try things out. I used to be worried about getting enlightened or something, that if I do that, then that'll save me. I'm not worried about it. I'm definitely nowhere close to enlightenment, but I'm not even sure if it really exists. One single, this is what enlightenment is. I know traditions hold it up as the golden jewel at the end of the path, but I'm not sure, because different traditions describe that experience differently, which is an issue. Then it's a subjective phenomenon. For me, after experiencing everything I've experienced, where I am right now, put a little caveat there, like subject to change. Where I am right now is that being a human being is an immense opportunity for learning and growth. And that might be the golden jewel at the end of the path, to be born in a human body with the limitations that we have. That's such a precious opportunity. I can learn so much that way. And in a sense, exploring the psychic phenomena, especially the out-of-body experience, it's sort of like finding the answers at the back of the book. Like, by the way, this isn't the end of the road. There's so much more than this. Don't worry about it. And I actually stopped training in the out-of-body experience because, one specific reason was, to do the training, I'd have to leave my bed at night to go do training similar to lucid dreaming training. And I realized I only have so many years with my wife where I could lay in bed with her and experience what that is, to lay in bed with our bodies, even just sleeping, but to experience that. And here I am leaving the bed to go train, to go out of my body, to go experience something else. That something else will be there when I'm dead. So why don't I spend this time being alive and experiencing life in my body? But I can't stop myself from being curious about those other realms, and being curious about psychic phenomena, and being curious about how that can affect our life in the body, because we are connected, whether we're being psychic or not. We're just little radio towers walking around the planet Earth, and we are in tune, even though we might not consciously know it. Some deeper part of us is sensitive, very sensitive, and we affect each other. And I think psychic experiences or psychic training can enhance a person's creativity, can enhance their sense of well-being, can increase a sense of meaning, of control in a certain sense. And these are all psychologically healthy aspects for people to have. Of course, someone can go off the deep end with it too, but generally, if someone is well grounded, there are a lot of opportunities for enriching a person's life through exploring consciousness this way.
Yeah, you had a really interesting, I don't know if it was a subtitle or something in there on Mystic Renegade that, it said something about exploring consciousness. And I thought that was fantastic because I see it the same way. It's like, what, greater thing can you do while you're here, right? But about the out-of-body experience, when, before you started training, did you ever have one sporadically, like randomly?
Well, so there was something that happened when I was on a meditation retreat, that looking back on it, it may have been an out-of-body experience. And so on these retreats that I had been part of, we meditate for 8 to 10 hours a day. So you're already in an altered state of awareness. And I was taking a nap in the middle of the afternoon during a rest period. And suddenly I became conscious while my body was asleep. So there's that mind awake, body asleep, which is classical requirement for the OBE. And I started feeling the energy flowing up my spine, up and down, up and down. And I felt my sense of self curling up as if I was like one of those little roly-poly bugs. Like I was curling up, but that curling meant I was curling away from my spine and curling away from my physical body. Like my consciousness or my sense of self was rolling out into itself away from the body. Well, this is while my physical body is laying down on the mattress. And actually what followed after that, I just felt the sensation and the curling for, it could have been moments or minutes, I'm not sure. When I returned to the body and became physically awake, I spent a few hours in what I would call a state of cessation, actually, where my mind was very clear, but it was free of any of that extra thinking we do all the time, and fear, hesitation, doubt, confusion, opinions. All that stuff was gone. And it was like this profound, profound level of peace. And I think it's described in different traditions, that kind of experience. And I think some people will go looking for that in their meditation. It's wonderful that by that evening, the wheels started turning again. And I tried to keep them from turning. Like, oh, I wanted to hang on to this experience because I really thought, is this the thing we've all been looking for? But even with that thought, like it was an indicator that my mind was starting to repeat its patterns again, which is fine. I mean, it's like, okay. So I had a taste of something, and it was in connection with that experience that I might call an out-of-body experience. The issue with the out-of-body experience is it can happen in so many different ways. Different people experience it differently, but you can't call it any one thing. Some people and I've experienced many different ways, but where your body kind of floats away, you float away from your body and go somewhere. I've had it where my feet lift up first and I separate and then I go down backwards through the floor.
Oh man, yeah.
Or where there's no sense of traveling away, you're just instantly conscious in a different environment completely.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, I had the vibrations, the feeling of the vibrations when I would separate, but more and more as I trained, those weren't necessary, or they were very subtle and very gentle. And then there are auditory hallucinations and all the hypnagogic phenomena that can occur during that phase of awareness. So it's a multifaceted experience, which is great, because if it was just one thing, someone would easily turn it into a religion, a dogma. This is the right way. There is no wrong way. Earlier, you mentioned the subtitle to my book, and the subtitle is The Pursuit of Spiritual Freedom through Consciousness Exploration. And the reason I wrote that was because I realized when I was tied to a teacher or a tradition, their main job is to keep their practices and their secrets or their teachings in a box so that it remains unchanged and can be passed through time. Like, these are the instructions, don't change them, don't mess around. And if anyone doesn't follow them, kick them out. Like, they're not part of this.
Yeah.
And my message in that book, the title is Renegade Mystic, but I'm not describing me. I'm describing anyone out there who is bold enough to explore in their own way, find their own answers, and contradict any of the rules and regulations a person would want to put on you to control you. Because once you know that all you need is a little bit of information and some effort and time, you can train yourself to experience whatever you want to, then you're free. Then you are a free person, which I think is important more than ever when everyone's trying to control each other.
Yeah. For me, I'm one of those, I don't know what you would want to call. I was fortunate enough to have like a bunch of different experiences, kind of by chance, right? Sporadically, randomly. So even when I was younger, I remember the first time that I had something of an OBE. It was the first sleepover I ever had. I was at a friend's house, and it was in first grade. Or this is the first one that I remember vividly in this sense as an OBE. And I remember I'm falling asleep, and the next thing I remember is floating up above my body, and like I'm just watching it, and I'm like, okay. And then for some reason it took like a few seconds, and then I'm like, holy crap, that's me. And then boom, I'm in my body, and I was startled out of my sleep. But it was very lucid, it was very vivid, and it never left me. So even at a very young age, I was cognizant of these different things, and I never undermined it. And from having experienced that, I never was like, oh, that was just a dream, because it was as real as my waking reality. And again, I was so conscious, and to even say, holy crap, that's me, and then bam, back in the body. And just kind of like another aside, it was actually, you've heard of yoga nidra?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the first time I heard about it, it was maybe like 8 or 9 years ago that I really heard about it. And this meditation teacher did a video on it. So I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I watched the video like 2 or 3 times, and then I went to sleep, and I had the weirdest, I don't know how to define this experience, I guess, but I went to sleep, and then just, I guess, maybe like moments after I fell asleep, my awareness was just this point of awareness, almost like, I guess you could say, above my third eye, above my head, and I was literally just there, and I was conscious, and it was almost kind of like a time lapse, but I was aware the whole time, and I was just looking as like in the room, like just as if I was sitting up and looking straight forward, and it just went on the whole time, and I'm conscious. But then I woke up, and it was exactly just, I was actually well rested, but I was awake the whole time. It was really, really bizarre, to say the least. But that's kind of just like a side story where I can relate to the OBE stuff. I had other really interesting OBE stuff, but that's another story. But getting to the actual Tibetan practices you did. So did they in that school of Tibetan meditation, did they ever talk about the powers or OBEs or anything like that, or not at all?
Not really. And there's this attitude about them. I mean, there was some discussion about it, and a lot of casual discussion, like not directly from the teacher, but from senior teachers or other people in the 2 different groups I was part of. And it was always like, shut down. Like, that's just a distraction, or it'll keep you from the path you're supposed to go on, or don't focus on that, which I found ironic and insulting, actually, because one of the teachers would sometimes hint that he had certain abilities, where his family members would talk about him as if his family members had certain abilities, which automatically sort of put them on a pedestal, and everyone's like, ooh, wow, they can do these things. And meanwhile, everyone else is told, don't focus on that, don't do that. So it's like this separation of, like, since these people are in a position of power, and these traditions, some of them are very hierarchical and very, it's run by men, very traditional. And so it's a way of like keeping power and control in an organization. And the other one, same thing, like this person is recognized as a reincarnation of someone else, and then he can remember texts, maybe, it's questionable, but all these hints that he has certain abilities that no one else should really focus on that because he's special and everyone else is just regular.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with some of these traditions. The teacher is regarded like the guru. You're supposed to see the guru as a perfect being, as a Buddha. If you can see your guru as a Buddha, then you will receive the blessings of a Buddha. This is what they say.
Yeah.
If you see them as an ordinary person, you won't receive any blessings. And it's almost it is a requirement for the guru's blessing to wake, for you to become enlightened, for you to do certain practices. You need someone else's permission and all these rituals. And what happens when you realize that your teacher is actually a narcissistic person, right? They have a personality disorder, or if someone else, they're really just hurting other people. And, you know, it's stuff. One of these teachers, I won't say who it is, but eventually things came out from a lot of witnesses, a lot of victims, a lot of hurt had happened. So how do you continue seeing someone like that in an elevated position, like they're enlightened, that they're doing all these things? So it would really indicate a personality disorder, or just what humans do when they're in a position of power is they want more power, and they'll take it psychologically, financially, sexually, in other ways.
Yeah.
I wonder if I just went off track a little bit.
No, it's all right. It's all good, man.
Yeah.
Because that actually gets me into the idea of something called the 3 trainings. And I don't know if that's in the Vajrayana tradition or not. I read it through Dan Ingram, and I know he's very Theravada-y, so maybe he got it from there. But the 3 trainings is morality, concentration, and wisdom, which the wisdom would kind of be like insight of Vipassana kind of thing, or realization. And, you know, one of the problems that there is, is that you have, I guess you can say, gurus or even spiritual teachers, and they could actually be really good in one of these facets and like horrible in the other. Like, so they might have done like a lot of heavy work and training, and they excel in the wisdom aspect, but their morality is what is not up to par, you know. So that's a genuine issue, and I guess, you know, the awakening or spiritual communities that, you know, you have that. And again, a lot of people who have certain kind of personalities tend to rise to the top regardless. You know, that's just, again, whether it's a business model and they're really good at that kind of thing, or you know, or if they're charlatans, or they're just really charismatic, you know.
Right. Well, there's in some of these teachings, there's the idea that everything is an illusion, and the idea of emptiness, right? Like nothing is substantial. And that's why in many of the teachings, especially the written teachings, they say that's why the morality is so important. Because if you really believe everything is an illusion, then you'll think you can behave in whatever way you want. And there's this idea of the crazy wisdom teachers, or these yogis who are so wild and crazy because they know everything's an illusion, that they act in ways that contradict societal rules. Well, that's interesting, but it's also an easy gateway for someone with antisocial personality disorder, where there's no concept of the rules and the laws and social constructs don't apply to someone with that disorder. They just don't see it, and they have no empathy. So there's this route for people with no empathy, with no sense of rules or social constructs, to fit that model, and they act crazy or they act abusively, but they say, well, I'm enlightened and everything's an illusion, and you should be okay with this because clearly I'm more evolved than you are. And I saw that repeated over and over, not only in teachers, but fellow students trying, you know, and probably I fell for it too at certain points in my training, like, oh, I wonder, what does this mean? And I see it not only in Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism, but I see it a lot in other traditions, other groups. Just this idea, like if you start to think about consciousness a certain way, or reality, it's just if you say it's just the Matrix, everything is, it's really easy to slip into narcissism. Like, it's my Matrix and it's my reality and it's all artificial anyway. And suddenly it's easier to really ignore other people's suffering.
Yeah.
Because maybe they don't think it's a Matrix and they're hurting. And because you think it's all illusion, there's that lack of reaching out to help others or to see things from their perspective. So it's really, really slippery. And that's why the morality aspect is really important to keep people from going there.
Yeah.
You get someone like that in a position of power, it's almost automatic. They get surrounded by people who are willing to go along with it because they bind their identity to the guru's identity or the teacher's identity, and then they support it. And then there's this weird dynamic that happens. And you see it in politics, you see it in schools, you see it in church. Yeah.
Yeah, it's you can call it like a spiritual trap. There's actually, and I guess, and it happens, just as much, in the Western and the Eastern traditions. There's all these talks about, there's this very enlightened guru, and then you find out there's, first you hear stories, and then you hear there's a scandal, and it's a genuine, I guess you can say, part of the spiritual path is you're going to encounter very human aspects, because at the end of the day we're all human, and no matter how much somebody claims to be enlightened or awakened, it seems that it's the same things can occur,
Exactly.
even I mean, I know there's a somebody involved in the kind of contact community where really same kind of thing, big ego, and the same kind of control issues and abuse issues go on. And on the one hand, they're excellent meditation teachers, and they clearly have a grasp of some kind of spiritual knowledge, in the sense where they can kind of explain those things comprehensively and are very intelligent, but the morality and the emotional intelligence is zero, and they definitely have some of those traits. Actually, there's a book, it's called Saints and Psychopaths by Bill Hamilton, and you got to read that book. I think you'll greatly appreciate it, and he even gives you a sheet in the book, like these are the check marks, right, for saint and psychopath, and it goes over these same kind of personality things. And Bill Hamilton was a big like a Dharma guy. He was going over I think either to Burma or Bodhgaya, and doing all the Buddhist meditation, but he was a Westerner, and he helped bring a lot of that stuff over to the West. And he had something I think called Dharma Seed, where he would get all these audio meditation recordings and stuff. But that's just an interesting note. But getting back to some of the other stuff, your story and everything, although this is very relevant to kind of some stuff you experienced and saw. And it's important for people that are, spiritual seekers or truth seekers, or people on the path of awakening, to recognize that, you got to be cognizant of these things, because they happen. It's not somehow in a different spiritual realm than ordinary life. Spirituality is life. So you shouldn't be separating and parsing out, well, this is spiritual, so it can do no wrong, or, there's nothing inherently different between spirituality and actual reality. If anything, you're looking at it at a more in a clearer way. But so you had the OBE stuff, the out of body experiences, and where'd you go from there?
Well, I wanted to start incorporating some of the stuff with my group. I had a group of friends and students I was teaching meditation to. The problem with the OBE is you can't really show it to someone. You would just be laying there, and you can't. It's not I'm going to do it tonight and it happens. Some people can do that, but I'm the kind of person where I have to train for weeks, do the training, and then it happens. I just, But I thought, what else is there something else I could learn to teach people, to show them with evidence that we are more than physical? And I was so lucky because I think it was accidental. I was watching a lot of videos about OBEs on YouTube and near-death experiences too. And I was on the International Association for Near-Death Studies, IANS channel. And it's no longer available there, but when I was there was a video with a woman named Shirley Black, who had several NDEs. And even in childhood, she had experienced telekinetic effects, which resembled poltergeists.
Yeah.
During her talk, she gave a demonstration. She had a little pinwheel of tinfoil inside an enclosed jar, and she had her hand sort of near it, giving the idea that she was sending energy or intention to it, and the thing started to spin. And I thought, that's it. And I saw that other people were doing this on YouTube, and some of them looked like, I don't know if this is legit, and some of them definitely seemed like the real thing. And I thought, I could learn how to do this. I'm going to teach myself how to do this. So I just watched a lot of videos, got whatever clues I could get from those videos. What are these people doing? And then applied everything I knew from my meditation training for the past many years. And I got the equipment, which is basically a piece of tinfoil, a needle, an eraser, and then a big glass cover.
Yeah.
And I don't remember, it was weeks, probably months of sitting in front of this setup for anywhere between 20 minutes to a whole hour, just sitting there looking at it, trying to make the little piece of tinfoil move on the needle. And it took so long for it to happen. And what's interesting is the night or 2 nights before it moved the first time for me, I was laying down, my head down to sleep. And suddenly there's a spontaneous image like right behind my forehead, which this area has connections with other abilities like clairvoyance and other things. But this image of the tinfoil just turning on the needle, it appeared right in my mind's eye. And I'd never had an experience quite like that before. And I couldn't control it. It was just there, this thing moving. And eventually I fell asleep and it faded away. But it was either the next day or the day after that when I was sitting there working with this object and it started to move, which was a clue for me that something had to change inside me before it could change out there in my reality. Maybe some part of me didn't believe it was really possible, or some part of me had fear about it, or some part of me was just blocking it in some way. But after those weeks and months of working at it, it finally cleared that obstacle and the thing started to move. And I think it's important people hear that, because a lot of people, they try, and on their first attempt, they're waving their hand and the thing starts to move and they think, I'm doing it. It's like, well, it could be a static charge from your hand if you're wearing a sweater or something. It could be something else. And I want people to know it took me a long time and a lot of hard work before it actually moved for me. And this experience happened and something cleared up. And then I thought, then I practiced for about a year where I could sit several feet away from this situation, from the glass dome, sit several feet away, and using the technique I developed, eventually get it to start to move. And basically what it comes down to is using basic breathing rhythm to relax the mind and the body so that you feel as if energy is flowing, and then you connect with the object with your intention, like you want it to move, paying attention to it, like looking at it with very soft eyes, and feeling as if you're connected to it, reducing that sense of separation from it, which is spiritual in a sense, that non-separateness from reality with other objects in our experience, like we're together in consciousness. And when the level of relaxation is really strong, and when the sense of connection is really strong, and then a sense of letting go, then the object starts to move. So it's beautiful that way. In my second book, Meditation X, Telekinesis, I rewrite Defy Your Limits, my first book, essentially into a meditation manual. So you can use telekinesis as a style of meditation, because it's a little exciting to see the little object moving. And you can tell that it's you doing it, because as soon as you tense up, as soon as I would tense up or get excited, it would stop.
Yeah.
And I would relax again, and it would start going again. So there's a lot of nuance to it. because if you just get it going right away and it's consistent, a person is apt to say there's air moving inside the container, or if you touch the container, you're heating up the glass, causing convection as the air movement. And that can happen, and it looks just like telekinesis. But if you do enough training over dozens or hundreds of hours, you realize the connection, and with your breathing, you can actually get it to change direction when you want it to change by shifting your level of breathing and how you use your attention. You can get it to stop and start again. The people who give up after 2 or 3 times won't experience that, or skeptics who don't work at it won't experience that. And they'll just say, it's just heat, and leave it at that.
Yeah.
So you really got to work at it. And so I ended up getting pretty good at it, and I showed it to my meditation students. And actually I was a little bit bummed out because some of them weren't sure if it was real or not, which is fair. You really need to experience all of these things yourself. You shouldn't believe anyone else. And some of them were like, well, I'm already meditating. I have a technique I like, so I'm not that interested. And then for a couple of them, there was the wow factor, and they got interested, and they did it once or twice. But it's okay. But then I found another audience online. Like, a lot of people are really interested in this.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. There's really no practical value to it unless you become an energy healer.
Yeah.
It's like training wheels. If you want to become a healer, an energy healer, that's a form of psychokinesis or telekinesis, where you are affecting another person with your intention. So that's one way where it is practical. It's also practical if you just think of developing your mind new ways, because synchronicities can occur. Other psychic abilities can increase. Your creativity can increase. When we think about the future and what we need our children to develop into as doctors and engineers and other kind of people who affect the world and how we do things, we need the future generations to think creatively, to think out of the box, to think of new possibilities. I mean, we already have wireless, which is a technological way of doing telekinesis or psychokinesis. Wireless technology, that's all it is. And if we survive on this planet for another 1,000 years, technology will look a lot more like psychic abilities.
Yeah, even I would say even 100 years. Look how far we've come in 100 years. I mean, 100 years ago they had like some of the first cars. Now we have like all these satellites in space, and the particle colliders and all this. It's incredible how far we've come in 100 years, and the technology stuff is actually a little freaky, because you have artificial intelligence and quantum computing, which I can't even understand what that is. So yeah, I think in even another 100 years, we're gonna just see some stuff in technology that's incredible. But I like the aspect that you're talking about. You can use this almost as like something to open your mind, right? Like you can, once you do something like that and you experience it for yourself, that almost acts as a catalyst in some senses for an awakening, and you don't even have to say like, oh, it's towards enlightenment. It's awakens your perception, your reality to something greater. I actually had something similar. I was doing something similar with CE5, right? Because for me, that was something you can show people and it could objectively occur, right? It's something that you could do and demonstrate, and there could be witnesses to, and they can see it and be like, oh, and that really, for a lot of people, that's almost, again, it's like a catalyst to an awakening experience, because they are totally aware of this kind of like whole new reality. You have to like take a step back and kind of question everything that you thought you knew when you have an experience like this. So I'm definitely interested in trying the telekinesis exercises that you put out. I'm really glad you did it, and I think it's so awesome. You put out all these books. It's like it's like a really could be like a training course. Do you do any kind of specific meditation for the telekinesis exercises?
Well, the breathing technique is the meditation because it relates to how you work with your mind. So,
Yeah,
anyone who's heard the word pranayama understands that physical breath and subtle breath and consciousness are all intimately connected. So it's a process of just relaxing deeper and deeper. You inhale, hold the breath in, exhale completely, squeezing it out slowly, holding the breath out. And at the top and the bottom, when you're holding the breath in, you're sending your intention up and you can feel a pressure inside, but it's not painful. It's just a subtle pressure. And then as you exhale, you hold it out. And you can keep your attention up here. And it's interesting because it's at the period when you're holding the breath in or out, often when you're working with the object, that it'll stop or reverse direction. And then when you exhale slowly, you release the breath, it might actually speed up. So there's this interesting thing about the breath and your energy and how it's affecting the environment around you. Now, I used to use the word energy as if there's really energy flowing, like chi or prana or something.
yeah,
But after everything I've experienced, there's a big question mark there for me because the
right.
sensation of energy might just be symbolic and symbolic of energy, or excuse me, information. Like I think
Right.
it all boils down even beyond energy, but it's all just information at the end of the day. All these psychic experiences or all experiences of consciousness are about the experience of information transfer.
Yeah,
And so I don't really know if there's a thing, well, except they found scientifically, they've photographed the meridians in the body now. So they've
yeah,
found them. And so that's on the physical level, but when you break it down more and more into the non-physical, it's just information at the end of the day. And I've talked to scientists about the kind of telekinesis that I do, and there's the idea that I might not be affecting the piece of tinfoil directly. And this is where I bring on the idea of the third actor. So there's me, the piece of tinfoil, but there's something in between us. And when I send my intention and everything I'm doing to relax my body, I might be tapping into or communicating with this third actor. And what that actor does is it changes the way the molecules of air inside the container move. Because normally in an enclosed vase or vase, all the air is bouncing randomly. It was Brownian motion, right? And creating equal pressure in all directions, but the molecules are bouncing. But what could be happening is consciousness, and it might not be mine, it might be something bigger than us, is affecting the movement of the molecules. So some of them or enough of them start to move synchronously to push, so they're all pushing against the tinfoil to make it move.
yeah,
And then as I hold my breath in and change my consciousness for a few moments, those air molecules change their movement as the object stops. And then I exhale and relax, and then the molecules line up again and start pushing even faster.
yeah,
So what's really happening here, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. But it's interesting to me that I don't need to know how it works. It comes down to intention and shifting my level of relaxation and consciousness. So I'm drifting from beta wavelength down to alpha, beta, and then everything else takes care of itself in
yeah.
some weird mystical way.
So the third actor, would that be something like the field consciousness? That is that what we're talking about? Something, right?
One person might call it the field, another person might call it God, another person might call it higher self.
Yeah, yeah.
I have to be safe and say I don't know.
Perfect.
But I'm happy saying I'm not that, and there's something bigger than me in the universe.
Yeah,
And it's cooperating with me. I think it's helping me.
yeah.
That's what I tap into when I experience all these things. So
Have you
and
ever?
there's mhm.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, and there's a whole other angle too, right? Of a lot of people connect their psychic ability with experiences with ETs or UFOs. And I've had that, I developed a lot of these things before having my first ET contacts, but like Uri Geller, I think he's
Yeah,
completely genuine. I think he's the real deal. But most people don't know, and they can easily read his biography or his autobiography. I like the one by Andrea Puharich. It's a great book. And you can go to Uri Geller's website. You can read his books for free on his website. When he was a kid, he was in a garden across the street and he had an encounter with a light being. And that's when his psychic abilities happened.
Yeah.
So there's a whole other angle. Is this third thing involved at all with the ETs? Or maybe they're just other beings who also, we're all under the same canopy.
Yeah. 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 I
They're
think,
just our,
yeah, I
they're
think
just our
there's something
cousins.
to
And,
that.
yeah.
And if you want to get really deep, you can get into Jacques Vallée, and he, in his book The Invisible College, he talks about this guy, Dr. X, who is a medical doctor in France, and he had the same kind of thing. He got hit with this beam of light from a UFO, and this guy was, again, he's not like, he's a doctor, is very skeptical beforehand, kind of regular, I guess, conventional person. And after he had this experience, and he actually had the marks from this beam of light that were studied. Jacques Vallée, he looked very closely at this case for many years. And after that experience, this gentleman, Dr. X, had a spiritual awakening and also started displaying psychic phenomenon, right? And it's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And I think Uri Geller may have said the same thing, but there's a question as to, were these abilities kind of just woken up due to contact and they were already innate, or did they somehow develop in that circumstance? And that, that's a huge question. It's funny, actually, on Engaging the Phenomenon last week, I had Jeffrey Mishlove. So we actually talked about Uri Geller, and we talked about the book, and we talked about Ted Owens, who was the PK man, who, same thing. He had these contact experiences, and he was a bit of an extreme case, but again, he was doing different PK psychokinetic or telekinetic demonstrations and UFO sightings and all that kind of mixed together. So that's fascinating. And again, getting back to Jacques Vallée, he talks about the potential for UFOs, or what we call UFOs today, but in the past have been called fairies and all these other mystical creatures, being something of like a thermometer or a control system. Somehow it's almost as if like the UFO or UAP are actual, some kind of program that is assisting our evolution, or controlling it in a way, or guiding it. That's again, that's very meta in a sense. And when I listen to Jacques Vallée, I think of it as I don't want to say metaphorical, but I think of a lot of what he says as a thought experiment. He's not saying this is actually what's going on, but he's proposing these ideas. And a lot of the ideas that he proposes are really kind of ahead of their time. He was talking about this stuff in like the 70s and stuff. And it's just like, he went from being an ETH, extraterrestrial hypothesis guy, to interdimensional and, hypothetical simulated control, experience and all this. So he had all these different models. So it's fascinating that it's kind of all these things correlate in a sense. But getting to some of your other stuff now, your newest book, what's Mindsight? Yeah. Hit us with that, man. What is that about?
Well, so I think the best way to start out is ask the viewers, did you see that movie Superhuman, The Invisible Made Visible, created by Caroline Corey? So a lot of that features those kids wearing the blindfolds, who they can play games, they can read books, they can do all sorts of awesome things. And there are a lot of videos on YouTube of other kids doing these things. So it's an ability that children can do really easily. Some of them can learn it in a matter of hours, if not days, where they can just see the environment around them without using their eyes. And adults can do it too. And it's not new. It's definitely not new. I know that in the Indonesian military trains people, trains soldiers to do this. There are two books written within the last century. One, the original was in French and then written in English. And the other one's written in English. Seeing Without Eyes. I can't remember the titles right now while I'm talking to you, but if you go on Amazon and look for Seeing Without Eyes, you'll find these two classical books written of doctors who are working to train people, adults, to do this. And for them, it was a long process. And if you go on Facebook and just look up Rob Freeman and Wendy Gallant, they have a wonderful they have two Facebook pages. In Rob's page, you can find a training partner as an adult to work on seeing things with your blindfold. And Wendy's group also talks about that, but they also talk about other consciousness experiences. And they both have YouTube channels. So I would encourage anyone interested in this, get to know Rob and Wendy, because they're a great example of adults who've trained themselves to do this really well. They've been training for, I think, at least 4 years. And they inspired me to write this book. Also because I trained myself before COVID in this ability. And I'm still a beginner, but I have enough taste of it that I thought I want to share this in the way I share information, which is writing books. And the book is an instruction manual to take people from seeing colors to contrast between black and white, and then picking up shapes, numbers, and then letters and short words. And in the book, I'm very clear that I can't even do these latter stages, but if someone starts what I've experienced and they keep going, and there's a step-by-step instruction, what you do every day, you'll get there. And this is based off of everything else I've read and people I've met and talked to. And it's really, there are two, I propose, I include two modes or two hypotheses of how this works. That either the skin has a way of perceiving information or perceiving light, and it's actually the skin, because there are instances in the past where people would use hypnosis to convince themselves that the cheeks could see. So maybe there's something about the skin that can perceive, or that it is purely a consciousness event, and it's really nothing other than clairvoyance. And I don't mean that to belittle it. I'm saying it is clairvoyance, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
And the reason why I include both formats is because for some people, it might be easier to believe that it's their skin. And that's a doorway in, because belief is paramount in any of these abilities.
Yeah.
You got to clear out any doubt about it for it to happen for you, generally, unless it's spontaneous and then you just have it. But for someone learning, letting them know that it's okay if you think it's your skin and approach it from that way, and it'll work. If you think it's pure consciousness, then go for it.
Yeah.
Plenty of evidence that it is just consciousness, because I've experienced this, and Rob and Wendy and others talk about this. You can do this in a dark room, like pitch black, no light, but you can still determine what color card you're looking at with a blindfold in a dark room. Your mind can still know what's going on there. Also, when people do this, they can do it in different rooms. So the light isn't going through the door. Like, this is not about light anymore. This is a mental event. Of course, in the book, I propose that, the human brain, the physical brain, has to work with non-physical consciousness. And that's the truth for any psychic ability or perceiving UFOs in the sky. We might have to talk about the caudate nucleus article that you...
Oh, yeah, you read it.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. Yeah. And I think it links into any psychic ability. The idea that the physical brain and non-physical consciousness work together for you to consciously experience or witness certain things. So this training system, I think mine or anybody else's, comes down to applying yourself in training over time so that your physical brain can grow the neural connections to understand this information coming in a new way because of your intention. And it's not that different from there are mechanical devices on the market today to help people who can't see. So people who are blind, who are visually impaired. I'm not up on what's the most politically correct way of saying it, but visually impaired people can buy this device. It's a little computer. You wear the glasses, it has a camera on it, and it connects to a computer that connects to this thing you put in your tongue. And the computer translates the visual images from the camera into sensations that your tongue feels. And your brain learns to interpret the sensations of the tongue into visual imagery.
Yeah.
So I think when someone is learning to use their consciousness or their skin to perceive, they're really training their brain to translate that information from those inputs into visual imagery.
Yeah.
And some people, they work and work and work at it. I stopped training myself because I got COVID and I was under immense amounts of stress and I had to deal with life and grad school and stuff. And really, stress is, in my experience, it's a training killer. When life is hitting you hard, it's really tough to keep going with some of the stuff. It's time to take a break and wait for life to settle down and continue your training. So I'm starting to train again now. Things are sort of evened out, and I'm training my friends in Denver, and they're doing really great. But again, I wrote the book, so they don't have to depend on a person to teach them. Although working with a partner, a group is great. Getting advice from people is great. But if you want to go to a training program, there's like a handful of them around the world. They're like a week long, typically, costing several thousands of dollars. And I understand that the teachers are giving their time, their experience. So there's a value to that. But I thought, for someone who can't afford it, or they can't fly to another country, or they're a private person, they'd rather train by themselves, they can use this book. And it gives them all the instructions. And it's connected to my website, which has downloadable meditations. Because again, it comes down to, it's just meditation. It's a secret way of getting people to meditate. And it's funny because if we look at the old texts in Buddhism, like Buddha says, the path of purification that we were talking about before the interview.
The Visuddhimagga.
There are instructions in there for the divine eye or the light kasina. And you use that for basically telepathy or for seeing things in another location. So this is, and it's just meditation.
And it's so funny. Daniel Ingram, he created a website called Fire Casino. And it's all about, it's because he has, said, in the Visuddhimagga and stuff, a lot of the powers are attached to these kasinas, right? These jhanic concentration exercises are like the basis for the powers and the abilities in a lot of cases, at least in the Buddhist texts. And he said, they've done fire casino retreats where they're doing like 10 hours of fire casino a day for like 14 days or something. And, once you get up to like the 70 hours, 100 hours, depending on the person, like things get really intense, so that's, to me, that's fascinating. And I actually wanted to start the training in the fire casino and see how it transfers and how it relates to some of the stuff. Cause I like to, experience and experiment with these different things again, because even though it's like, I've had these experiences and I kind of know this stuff, it's still, every time you experience one of these different kind of phenomenology aspects, it almost like wakes up a part of you, like, oh, wow, this is real, So have you ever, I want to say I saw you do it in a video, but have you ever seen the quantum spoon bending?
Yes. Yeah. And I've taught spoon bending and I've got a couple of videos and I still get emails from people. They watch my video and they're doing it at home with their kid. And the kid does it, no problem. And then just bloop. And it's funny because the videos and in the classes I've had, it's usually forks and spoons. But in my book, Signal and Noise, at the back, I have some photos of my friends. And, one time they came over to my place and one of my friends is a middle-aged woman of average strength. Like she doesn't work out. She's a middle-aged person. She's petite. She's short. And I gave her a steel bar. It was like a maybe quarter-inch steel rod. And we were doing the spoon bending with people. And we also, I thought for kicks, let's watch a Uri Geller video. And there's a video of him with people getting a soccer ball to move. We thought just for an experiment, when they yell, they were going to scream move or something like that, we're going to yell bend.
Yeah.
So we're sort of like overlaying two different things. And she did her thing, and the steel bar just
Oh
bent.
my goodness. Yeah.
And I think that day she did it twice, or someone else did it twice. And also, I've taught, I can't say I taught them. I give them the technique, and they did it, which is great. That those pegboard hooks you can buy at Home Depot.
Yeah.
They're steel. They're like 6, 7, or 8 inches long, and they're thick. And I've tried to bend it with all my strength. Can't do it. But with my friends, I've got it to bend a little bit. But I have 2 friends bent it just like that, and they said it felt like butter.
Yeah. And I did it I did it a few times just with spoons that like were tough to bend, and then they just actually bent. And I mean, it's exciting too. I think I recall somewhere hearing that they analyzed some of those materials that were bent before, and there was some kind of weird magnetic effect to them. I can't remember where I heard that. I remember there was a guy who was teaching it. I want to say his name was Ang. I can't remember. That's where I first heard of it. And this guy was, he was teaching it, and he had prepared some materials for it. And maybe I'm trying to think if Claude Swanson also had written about it in one of his books.
Probably, yeah. His books are great.
They're like
Swanson's books,
literally college like textbooks. They're incredible work. From any kind of metaphysical perspective you're coming from, those books are must reads. They're fascinating. I only read through half of one and kind of like parsed through the rest of it. But they're massive. But
I think earlier you were trying to think of Jack Hawk. Is that who you were talking about?
Oh, Jack Hawk.
Jack Hawk. So he's the one. He had the metals analyzed, and it seemed like in some of them, some of the molecules or atoms were just gone, or they didn't exhibit the same fractures that would normally occur because of heat or because of mechanical strain. So he did the analysis because he was an engineer or physicist. But he's the father of the PK party, of the spoon bending party.
The spoon bending parties. And that's actually in John Alexander's book, Reality Denied. At the end of the book, they're talking about the spoon bending parties, and he goes through some of the exercises on how to do it. And it's fascinating because it's not just like it's one person. Like you have all these people that are able to demonstrate it. And, that's incredible. I mean, maybe there's some kind of weird thing where we don't understand what's happening, but either way, there's something there that's it says something about reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the person can have like 2 responses. They experience it, and they either open up more, or they shut down and like walk away. Like, no, I didn't see that. I didn't hear that. Like,
it's like the same thing with the CE5 too. It's like a gateway into the greater reality. Contact or psychic phenomenon. I look at all these things as different kind of awakening experiences, because I mean, in my own experience, they've been enriching and teachable moments and experiences. So what do you have plans for another book already? Or any, because I mean, it's like every time I look back, you get a new book, and I'm like, holy crap, I still have to read the other one.
I know. And I keep thinking I just want to leave this whole field. So I'm going to give you some real personal information.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I feel like shutting down, or sometimes I feel like I'm way too open, and I just want to go away. We just have a regular life and not deal with any of this stuff. And I think I'm done writing these books. I'm done teaching and all that stuff. And sometimes it's just because I feel exhausted. It's really emotional stuff, because we're talking about reality and sense of self. And I feel like I've been through the laundry with this. Like I've been and getting skeptics and other getting hate mail, that kind of thing is pretty rough and pretty sensitive. So sometimes I feel like walking away, but but I love teaching people, even if it's not psychic stuff, just showing or sharing information. I love it. It's a passion of mine. And if I learn something new, if I figure something else out, I'll probably write about it so other people can do it for themselves. Because I think I still have a chip on my shoulder from the days when I was in those spiritual organizations
Yeah.
where I had to give my personal power to someone. Now everything I've done is to give people their own power, like not that they had it, but to remind people you're fully in charge of yourself. Keep your power. Don't give it to someone else. And here's some instructions. And just if you do them, you can experiment with them, change them if you want, do whatever you want. It's yours, and go your own way. Like that's
Yeah.
the overall message. Like you can go your own way. You know,
Yeah.
the song. And so probably if I write more books, it'll just still be in that spirit to help people find their answers on their own. And it's okay if their answers are different from other people's answers.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you had any kind of CE5 stuff?
Oh yeah. So a few years ago, and I think I credit my out-of-body experience on lucid dream training. I started to have contact with the beings sort of in the liminal state, so in a non-physical reality. Had my contact there. Actually, in my book, Renegade Mystic, there's an artistic depiction of a sexual encounter I had with one of the beings. Because I wrote notes, I keep a journal every time I experience something, and I drew this being that I had an intimate encounter with. And a friend of mine was an artist, and I described it to her. I showed her my drawing and asked her to draw something so that I could show people. And so that's in the book. But then I thought, you know, I'm skeptical myself. I think I'm an open-minded skeptic. I doubt what I experienced, so I investigate it carefully. And I thought, but I just need more experience with these beings. Like, was this just all a dream? Was it just a dream, or was there something to it? And at some point, I was exhausted one day, and I went to the Botanic Garden here in Denver, and I spent all day laying in the grass on a hill, looking up at the sky. And then my wife, she got off work, and she came and joined me, and we're just laying there at the grass, looking up at the sky. And there, something appeared. This most beautiful color. It's like a green, what's the word? Opalescent, this beautiful thing way up there. And then it would fade out and come back. And, you know, and I was looking around like, who can I show this to? And strangely, there was like no one around in the middle of the Botanic Gardens. So we're just there. And then 20 minutes later, it was gone. And my wife, she's also open-minded, but she's also careful. And she's like, I'm not sure what that was. And that's fair. That's a sign of sanity. Meanwhile, I'm like, I think that was a UFO.
Yeah.
And what's strange was, for me, you know, it was following these other liminal space experiences that I'd had. So for me, it was connected. I was like, and for like a week after that, I felt a sense of grace. Like I'd been touched in some way. It felt wonderful. But I needed more.
So, of course.
I think it was in 2019, I joined a group with Ricardo Gonzalez. He's from Peru.
Yeah. Wow.
And Paula Harris from StarWorksUSA.com. She hosted him. So he held a weekend in Crestone, and I went with about 50 people. And we had lectures during the day, and at night we did sky watching, and they showed up. And he taught us to ask them to verify. So we saw the flash bulb, and we asked, please verify. You can do it again.
Yeah.
And then some other thing, which too long to describe here, but something else occurred. And then actually, I was with him again. It was like 3 or 4 weeks ago. He came back to Crestone.
Yeah. Oh, that's
absolutely
amazing. Yep.
And it was like, it's palpable. So these are things, I'm going to give you an example of how this is all connected. I knew I was going to the Ricardo Gonzalez retreat. The 3 nights before, I had a dream. And in this dream, this man is coming down on a parachute and landing nearby on the grass. And in the dream, I've sort of walk over and say, hey, good job. I pat him on the back. And in the dream, I understood him to be, he'd come down from space like he was on a space mission, and this is just how he came back. Oh, and I woke up thinking, oh, I had this dream because I'm about to go on this UFO sighting weekend, and the man represents an ET or something, or a connection to space. And so here I am in Crestone in real life a few days later, and we're on an afternoon break, and I'm walking through town, and Crestone is a really tiny town. There's not one electric stoplight in town. It's just stop signs, like 3 of them. And I'm walking on the edge of town, just minding my own business. And I've been to Crestone many times. I lived there for a year, many years ago. And I see the shadow come over me. And I look up, and there's a paraglider coming down really quickly, landing in someone's backyard like a block away.
No way.
And I
That
thought,
is so
you know,
awesome.
the whole time I thought my dream was because I just creating this idea connected to ETs. But the dream was a precognitive dream of seeing this paraglider. And all the times I've been there, I didn't even know people did paragliding in Crestone.
Yeah.
But there's this paraglider coming down right there. And can I give you another dream example?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so this just happened a few days ago because I've been working with some of my friends here on the mind site stuff, and I've been training myself. This is just to show how everything is interconnected. I had a dream a few nights ago that I won the lottery, the big lottery. And my friends and I, we used remote viewing as a team, and we won the Pick 3 lottery, which is a really small lottery, but we won it twice using remote viewing. And so I had this dream that I won the big lottery, and I felt elated, probably the way anyone feels if they won millions of dollars. And I woke up and I'm thinking, I'm gonna go buy a ticket. I didn't win, by the way. But that morning, I get an email from someone who I know through Facebook. I don't think we're Facebook friends, but we've communicated before. And she emailed me about Mindsight and about how she was really good at using her dreams to predict. She called it Catch 3 and Catch 4. So I think she's outside of Colorado where they have Catch 3 and Catch 4. But she wins, or she gets really close interpreting her dreams. And the night before, I dreamt about winning the lottery. And so I told her, it's so strange that you emailed me today because I had this dream, and then and that morning or that early day drawing, she had won it.
Yeah.
And I replied to her email, and then she writes me back at the end of the night, she won a second time for the evening drawing.
Yeah.
You know, so that I had the dream the night before. She emails me, I email her back, and she wins twice that day because of her dream interpretation. You know, it's all tied up in a knot that I don't understand. But all these things are connected.
There's your next book, Synchronicities.
Right, Synchronicities.
That's another fascinating topic, and you know, I don't want to get too much into my stuff now, but I made a video on engaging the phenomenon called Dream Time Contact, and it goes into all those elements just blend into one thing. And again, it's just something that blew my mind because it ended with a daytime sighting of this fireball. You know, it had synchronicities, lucid dreaming, and then it ended with that sighting. And that was one event of several events that occurred. So it's just fascinating. Are you familiar with Eric Wargo's work? Okay, wow, dude. Check out his books. There's 2 books, Time Loops, and the other one, I want to say it's his new book. It just came out. It's got like a beautiful cover and everything. I think it's called like Precognitive Dreaming, and it's all about that. And it's, again, I think you'll find it really fascinating. But let's end it there, because I could just sit here and talk to you all day, man. You're just like one of those guys. You know, you have such a kind of like, you got your fingers in everything, man. You got the background.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah, I can empathize with that. But it's been great having you on, and I do want to actually have you over on Engaging the Phenomenon as well. So let's coordinate for that. And dude, if we can ever plan to do a CE5 or any of these trainings together at some point, man, I definitely look forward to that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, man, it'd be
Thank
so
you
awesome.
so much. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
great. I really appreciate your
Yeah.
invitation, and
And
thank you so much.
do you have any kind of parting words for the audience?
That all these experiences are available to you if you really want them. You just need some instructions, and I have some, but many people out there are offering instructions, and it's up to you to find the ones that attract you the most and inspire you the most and are easy to use. And then it's about each person dedicating the time and energy. And in a sense, all you really have to do is start meditating on a regular, choose whatever technique works for you. They all come down to the same thing, like quieting the mind and developing concentration, relaxing, and things will naturally open up. So get off social media, stop watching TV. You don't need to rely on substances at all for any of this. I don't think a person should. But it's all there, and you don't have to give your personal power away. People are lining up to become gurus and priests and thought leaders, and like they know truth. They know the truth you're looking for. Well, be careful.
Yeah.
Keep your power. You can trust them. You can follow them. Keep your power. Don't give it away.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Sean, for being the first guest on Meta Perspective. And again, I definitely want to have you over on Engaging the Phenomenon to talk more on those kind of subjects. But again, thank you so much, and I hope to speak to you again soon.
You're welcome. Okay.
Right, take care, buddy.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.